I don't see Senator Wentworth here yet, do I? No. I sure hope he shows up. I wish he could hear this. Actually, I'm standing here in the place of Eric Anderson, who got the flu, and I got a call late yesterday and put all of what I'm going to share with you together after church. So it's not a PowerPoint. I will work with Sharon or whomever, and we'll try and get it posted on the Tea Party website. But to support Eric, who did run for Senate, State Senate last year, there's some flyers for his business back there on the resource table. But I'm here to talk about redistricting and the unity of the Tea Party movement is critical to this. And I say movement because it's really a conservative patriot movement, whether you call it 9/12 Tea Parties or anything else. It's we conservatives who want to take control back from our government and make sure they represent us and not other interests. And in my opinion, that we bring God back in charge of this city, county, state, and nation. Thank you. As he mentioned earlier, Texas is going to get 4 new congressional seats. Texas was the fastest growing large city in the nation. Fort Worth actually grew percentage-wise a little bit faster. I'll share the numbers with you in just a second. But San Antonio grew faster and greater than any other big city in Texas. So that means that we should get a minimum of 1 new congressional district. Just to read a couple of numbers, Houston only grew 7.5%, but that was 145,000 people. By the way, the flight from Louisiana that caused him to lose a seat came to Texas. And frankly, that was a good number of Hispanics and Black Americans that came and primarily to the eastern part of Texas and stayed here because Texas is such a great state. San Antonio grew 16%, but 182,761 new people, according to the census. And that was far and away the greatest number of a large city. Rick Perry has sidestepped the issue of how that should be reapportioned, redistricted. Not that we shouldn't expect that, but what I'm going to encourage you to do, and I'm on a committee that has already been working on this, led by a couple of really bright guys I'll share with you a little bit later, but we need to influence the redistricting of this state and hopefully any other states. The League of Latin American Citizens, LULAC, their general counsel, Luis Vera, said Hispanics should control all of the new seats. This, in my opinion, opens this Tea Party and others to a whole new need for another Tiger team, linking up with the LNRC, the Latino National Republican Coalition, et cetera, to educate Hispanics, and the bulk of Hispanics, that they're truly conservative people. In Clayton Trotter's campaign, I had the privilege of going to a number of Hispanic households. Just by interviewing them briefly, they found out that they're truly conservatives, and that's the move that we need to get going. The chair of the state redistricting committee, Senator Kel Sigler, a Republican of Armadillo, Amarillo, vowed that the legislature would adhere to federal civil rights law when it redraws the map, but it's going to look Republican. And I think that that's an innuendo for gerrymandering. And what I'm going to share with you is my own personal desire, and what I hope will be your desire, that we want to prevent gerrymandering. If you would have ever looked at the District 20 that Clayton Trotter ran for Congress, it looked like a stingray with a tail whipping around on the east side and big holes in it in other places. Our first priority must be to demand the passage of a fair redistricting principles on how the lines are drawn with a related state constitutional amendment. Let me re-say that, because that's what the purpose of this is, to share with you what I think should be one of the missions of this group, is to lobby and to move that lobby throughout the state to get a state amendment to the Constitution for fair redistricting that will prevent the gerrymandering that both Democrats and Republicans have done, and will stop millions of dollars of legislation fighting us back and forth, et cetera. And this may be the first time ever that we could see not only conservatives, Republicans, and Democrats and others come together, because this is too logical. And I hope Senator Wentworth, who just walked in, paid real good attention to this, because we're talking about redistricting, Senator. So our first priority is a state constitutional amendment for fair redistricting. Second priority, demand that any plans passed by the legislature must be free of gerrymandering, with no partisan lines or special protection of incumbents. Only 2 private citizens have ever really worked on this up until the last 6 months, and that was Bill Owens of San Antonio, who's an attorney who's actually presented this to the State Redistricting Committee 3 times, 3 different census tract times, and A.J. Pate out of Houston. I'm going to quote a lot of what A.J. Pate has presented to the most recent Redistricting Committee to share with you some of the logic behind this. The U.S. Constitution requires federal census must be taken every 10 years. We all know that. Actual remuneration shall be made every subsequent term of 10 years. All persons must be counted. Does not include illegal aliens, by the way. Federal law requires congressional and state legislative districts must be redrawn after each federal census, regardless if they grew or shrank in population because of population shifts. So even Louisiana has to look at redistricting because of changes in population. States must redistrict even if there are no changes. I just mentioned it. Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court rulings. Districts cannot discriminate against minorities by gerrymandering. We violated that the last 2 censuses. Districts cannot be drawn for minorities by gerrymandering using race as the sole basis for the district. This is all Supreme Court written findings. Congressional districts must be drawn as nearly equal in population as possible, in the absence of fair redistricting principles. State legislative districts cannot have a total population variance of more than 10%. In the last 10 years, the average district in San Antonio or in Texas was about 665,000, somewhere near that number. So that's a lot of people per district. But if you look at the way we were redistricted, take Kiko Conseco, his district went from El Paso to San Antonio down to Del Rio. I mean, it's ludicrous in terms of how it was done. Texas law. Has Texas done anything about congressional districts? Nothing in the Constitution. State Senate districts, nothing. State House districts, nothing. Constitution must be contained within counties as much as possible. No statutes have even been passed. So Texas has been very weak in terms of looking at fair redistricting, and I think with the massive move that occurred and the growth in our population and the obvious conservative bent of Texas, it's time that Texas passes this amendment to the Constitution. A brief timeline for redistricting. February 15th, most of you have heard the census numbers are out. I just read some of them to you. April 1 is the deadline for delivery of census population data. We've basically already received it. May 12th is the last day to pass a House bill. May 30th, legislative adjourns in a regular session legislature. May 31st through August 27th, the legislature redistricting board convenes if Senate and House districts were not enacted. This is brief, and again, we can post this on the website so you can go back and refer to this. But what I'm hoping all of this information will do will encourage you to want to be involved in a lobbying movement behind a fair and honest redistricting amendment to our Constitution. And the final deadline for filing is January 2nd of 2012. Back to our initial question of how to achieve this. Get fair redistricting legislation passed before any plans are drawn. That means we need an amendment to the state constitution before the committee starts seriously drawing redistricting plans. And that's no later than March 15th. So if we're going to get involved, we have an awful lot to do in a short period of time. Failing fair legislation, get a fair plan drawn by the committee itself. That means going and having our own representatives be there when this committee is drawing this. Again, I mentioned in the last 20 years, the only people who have been actively involved in this have been Bill Owens and A.J. Pate. But now this body, through groups like our own, is growing, and we can get this movement going across the state. How many fair redistricting bills have been passed or filed in the Texas legislature in the past 25 years? None. Fair redistricting principles. Respect Texas geographic regions as defined by the 24 councils of government. We'll try to get all this on the website, but if you look at Texas, it is completely divided up by homogeneous councils of government, where the economic basis of this council is the geography and the economy of that area. ACOG is the Alamo Council of Governments, consisting of several counties, I think 7 counties around San Antonio, and that makes sense. So when you're looking at redistricting, you got to look at the economic involvement, the ethnic involvement, and not the political involvement of the people. Do not unnecessarily split counties and cities. Do not unnecessarily split communities of interest. That's like an ACOG. Do not split census tracts, smallest units for districting. That's another thing. Right now, they'll saw a census tract in half if it meets a gerrymandering desire, and I won't say that's a need. So this becomes part, and A.J. Pate has already written a proposed amendment to the state constitution. All of this is completely detailed in that document, which is probably 20 pages long at this point. Do not split census tract smallest units for redistricting. Keep districts geographically compact. Do not use any partisan data. The odds against us is in overcoming legislative resistance, but we've already seen what the Tea Party can achieve, both nationally and just the comments on the number of states who have turned conservative. He said Republican, but the word is truly conservative. And that's what this state has always been in the last 10 years, and that's where it has moved to in this last election. So by this group taking responsibility to get involved and see this change, we can actually have an amendment to the Constitution. If we can generate enough public demand for fair redistricting, the impossible may be achieved once more. Some questions to ask your legislators. How much courage does it take to sponsor a fair redistricting bill? Somebody else. How much courage does it take to sponsor a redistricting bill? How would any politician oppose fair redistricting when that is what 80 to 90% of the Texans want, regardless of party, race, or ethnicity? Why specifically would a politician not sponsor a bill like this? On and on and on. But these are things that we could use in a lobbying effort, and I'm going to mention that right now. When I mention lobbying effort, it's not a one-time event. What we could do is, through the auspices of this and other similar groups, have somebody visiting our state senators and congressional district representatives once a week, every week, all the time, with a consistent message of what the people want. They will listen. It hasn't been done before in this matter, but if this group decides to do it, it will happen. Thank you.